Hi, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everybody, wherever you are in the world. This is Break Free for Your Monkey Mind podcast, season 2, episode 3. So thank you very much for joining us again. I'm pleased to say tonight I have a guest with me, Mark Lestrange from Dublin. So how are you doing, Mark?
Tony, how are you? Thanks a lot for having me on. I really appreciate it. I love your podcast. It's brilliant.
Thank you for coming on, Mark. Yeah, that's great. We'll get a bit into why I've brought you on in it, but just to give people an idea about yourself, can you just say who you are and where you're from and everything?
Yeah, well, as you said, my name is Mark Lestrange, and I'm from Dublin, and I do a podcast myself. I've started during lockdown. It's called Marx Motivational Podcast, where I have different guests on, have authors and songwriters and NLP people from around the NLP as well. That's what I do at the moment, and I do a fair few things, but that's the main thing I'm really doing at the moment, you know.
For anybody that doesn't know, NLP is neuro-linguistic programming, but we'll come on that a wee bit later on just to explain what it is. We get to that, but one of the reasons I brought Mark on tonight was because things he's just mentioned. I met Mark through lockdown, through practicing some coaching things with some people as a group of us. And one thing that really impressed me, and I don't know if he actually realised it, I said to him at the time, is how much he was helping people through lockdown by his podcast, which at that time, if I remember, it was Mark's Music podcast.
Yeah,
he had originally.
Right, yeah.
And the reason Mark did that is he's said about songwriting there, but Mark actually is a songwriter and a singer himself, and he's lead singer of a band as well, which we'll get on in a few minutes. But so Mark brought in something that was helping people through music, really through the lockdown. But it expanded because so many things that Mark was doing at the time, which was great. He's now mentioned his podcast now, Mark's Motivation, because he didn't just bring music into it. He brought a relief for people who were struggling with the lockdown. He brought things like coaching techniques into it as well that could help them to help themselves. And then another aspect of it, but he forgot to mention, he says he had authors on, but he's actually a published author himself. He had a children's book. It was on, remind me the name of it.
It's Larry Lamppost and Friends, Tony.
Right, good. And how did you come up with that?
Well, basically, I've always made up stories for the children, bedtime stories. So I decided to put them all into a book, all the stories. When I was like at the first lockdown, I had all these stories in my head. So I was basically getting them down on paper. So I did that, and it turned out really well. So I decided to self-publish it then. And so people kind of liked it, and I've actually started a second book now, sequels. So it's been like, it's gas when you like through it. When I found NLP, it actually streamlined for all different stuff as well, like neuro-linguistic programming. I got to write a book. I just seemed to kind of flow with doing different stuff. So it was great. Like, it really was great experience.
And it's a great example for people, thinks that can not sure what they want to do, but you said that sometimes people have got ideas in their head. They're not sure what to do. All you did was put it down on paper, and then you published it yourself on Kindle. Is it on Amazon?
Yeah, Kindle. Yeah,
Amazon.
Kindle.
So if anybody wants to get it now, can you still get it on Amazon just now?
Yeah, you can get the Kindle version at the moment. At the moment, I'm still working on the paperback to go back up online. But it should be fairly shortly. In the next month or two, I'll have it all back up in all the major online stores. So thanks a lot.
Should be back just in time for Christmas then.
Yeah, hopefully.
So a Christmas present for the kids. And what age group is it fit?
Well, that's a good question. I think it's from, I kind of put it from 7 to 10, because there's certain stories in it that you can tell a young child. That can't read, that get a good laugh out of it. Then there's older children can read it themselves and get something out of it as well. So the different age spans is actually a good thing, because it's something for every kind of age group of child, like, so
and there was sort of morals behind it as well with the stories you're telling. So that's why I was saying is that about quite a variety of things that you've done over the last 18 months. So you've got the children's book that was helping obviously on ones. You've done the music side, helping people out, but also giving ideas to people who are new to the music industry, maybe how to write songs and how to deliver themselves. And you've done your own, and a lot of your own songs are actually on your podcast as well. You've done, which I've heard quite a few, so they're great. I like
Cheers,
them.
Thanks. Yeah.
But also you've been on radio because of your songwriting as well. You had that in the podcast. So there's been quite a bit. But the reason that Mark's on tonight is because I've had quite a few requests discuss a subject that is quite prominent at the moment in schools, but it's probably prominent all over the world because of social media. Now, before I start, don't get me wrong, social media can be such a great thing. As we've just spoken about for both of us, it's promoted us in different ways. From our business, it promoted me in the business, it's promoting us for our podcast. We've met a lot of people over the last year or so because of social media. But there's also a darker side sometimes of social media. We've seen on TV in the last few days, everybody's into sports, seen it again, it's raised its head again because of the racist thing, that not being governed enough, and you get a lot of that going on to a lot of people. But one part that I've had a lot of requests for is bullying. And the reason I brought Mark on is we had a conversation several months ago that both of us had an issue that when we were younger. And it was just a conversation one evening, the two of us were talking what we've been through and what we've managed to achieve. And when I got so many requests for this now, I thought it'd be a perfect example again for us to have that kind of chat again, just to give our scenarios what it was. Maybe look at how did it happen now, or especially you having the children, if one of your kids came to you now and told you what they were going through like you did, how would you deal with it? So these kind of things I want to go over now, but just to get a bit of background on it. They're a little bit different from us when we were younger to now. Most of the bullying they see at the moment is done through social media, so it's more of a mental abuse. There can be threats in it as well, but it is more mental. Whereas I think when we grew up, it was more mental, but it was about the physical side. It was more the mental abuse was you were going to get hurt. So an example for mine was that there was 2 gates out of the school, and no matter which way you go, you knew somebody was going to be there waiting for you. If they were threatening you, there was never really one. There was always a few of them. So you knew you couldn't get you. You would pick the worst of the bad options. That was it. As you go, right, what's the best way I can get out of here? And then one way you probably get hit, the other one you might get hit a bit worse. So you pick that one. And it was just looking at then for us how we faced that, what we could do now. Because when I spoke to some of the ones that asked for it, a couple of them I did want to see they would come on and talk about it as well with us as a group, but they don't. I think they're more concerned about the stigma, still worried about it. I said, I don't worry about that anymore. I mean, to me now, it can't harm me anymore. So why would I worry about stigma and talking about it? So when we spoke about it before, you said you had some. So how did your situation happen to you?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question. When I was younger, like I was smaller and I wore glasses. So, you know, when you're a kid in school, they just look for something they can pick on. They think you're inferior to them and all that kind of stuff. So, like you said, Tony, as well, I had the problems when I was walking out of school. Like you got a group tying you to a lamppost and throwing milk out all over you and throwing your books away. Like it was really, really hard. But then, as well as you could kind of get over that physical sort of thing, but then the excuse me, the mental side can be actually worse, you know, for you know, the way they pick on you and taunt you and all that kind of stuff. So that was a really hard time, like being in school, you know. But like I suppose, like to answer your other question as well, like for my kids, I try to instill in them that like it's not you that have the problem, it's them. You know, you have to say, like, you know you're a good person, you know, you're not going to end up like them. They're going nowhere in life if you pick on someone. Just thankful you're not like them, Tony. You know, that's what I'd be saying. You don't have to go as low as them to pick on somebody for no reason. So yeah, so that was my experience of it. Like I had the physical side of it where people like bash you for no reason, beat you up for no reason. And then you had the mental torture as well, which can be worse and can actually affect your true life as well. Like, you know, where you know, if you're with a crowd and you're much quieter than them because you're afraid of being singled out, even though you're an adult, you can still get that, like where you're afraid to kind of speak your mind in case you be laughed at, or, you know, it's going to happen to you again because it happened to you when you were younger. So that's what I think. That's my thing that happened to me, you know.
Yeah, thank you for that. I know it's not easy for people talking about things like that, and I think it's both of us had similar things. There was like school time, but I also had the outside school with different people. I was similar, very small child, but I was also a very, very slim child, and it was that was part of it for me, was not being able to, like, as strong as them, stick up for myself. And the thing that always used to get me was that it was whatever they said that day was going to happen, even if I managed to get away with it, and I was quite quick, so I could run and get there. Usually I took in a couple of knocks, but I'd get away. but it was the feeling at night that you didn't want to go to school. You would start feeling unwell, right?
Yeah.
And your mum would never believe me. She'd know when you're playing up, what's wrong, nothing. But you just, I just don't feel well today, because you had that fear when you go on, it just started over again and you didn't want to face it again. For me, there were certain people that seemed to be involved all the time with it. And I made some daft choices at school. When I did it, was getting pinned in a room, and one of them called me Tasmanian Devil because I could spin around in circles and I just punched and kicked everything that was in sight.
Yeah.
But as I started to grow up, it was always there. I moved to London, and it was scary. And you try and make yourself sort of bigger in some ways than you really are. So you live this facade, this image, because I didn't want to be known as the weak one like before. So you try and get better. I went in to do some kickboxing, some boxing with people, just so that I could, I suppose, tough myself up there. But then I'd grown quite a bit, and I'd forgot that I suddenly was 6 feet tall. I wasn't the 5 feet little skinny kid at school anymore.
Yeah.
And it did bother me for a lot of my life until about 18, 19 years ago. I came back up to Scotland and went into a bar and saw one of the people that used to bully me standing at the bar. And every vein at my neck bulged. My face went bright red. My girlfriend, who was now, was there. And I was so angry and I had to explain what had happened. And I walked over to the bar, so intent, but I always swore I would kill them if I saw them again. And not literally, but I would get them back for what they'd done to me. But I stood over this guy at the bar, and I don't know, 6, 7 inches, that's what it felt like, taller than him. And he looked at him and, "How you doing, big man?" and just went back to get his drink. And in that moment, I looked at him, and it was like staring at a little old man. And I'm thinking, this is the guy that used to do that to me. And he didn't even know who I was. And he just saw me standing next to him. And I don't know, suddenly all the colour just come back into my face, all the veins stopped. And for all those years, all that hatred that was inside me disappeared. It just came out because I looked at them, and you made a really good point now. It's not me, the problem is them. That's the first moment that I actually realised that I looked over it and went, if I do anything now, I'm as bad as they were when I was young, because he's no match for me. So if I hurt him, I'm any better. And all that hatred I had, it boils into nothing. And it was a weird moment, because in one respect, I felt brilliant because I just stood over him and I'm going, oh, I remember them standing over me and what that felt like. But in the other respect, he didn't even know who I was. That was the bit that bothered me the most. He didn't even recognise me. He just called big man because I'm standing way above him. And I went, that's the bit that was really bad. I remember every bit about him, but he didn't even know who I was. And it showed that, I don't know why I carried that around then, because it meant nothing. If he didn't recognise it, to him it was nothing. But you were right when you say it's them, it's got the problem. So if we could get anything to kids now, or the parents, that's when they let the kids know, is that, we're not saying Disney hurt, name calling or getting picked on, and as you said, getting things done to you, it does hurt, embarrasses you, you feel awkward, but it doesn't last forever.
Exactly.
It feels emotions. And if we can get people, you mentioned something earlier, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, or NLP. That's one of the things how we met actually was through that.
That's right,
One aspect of that coaching that's really good is because it's looking at things in different perspectives. And you can look back on things and see it now, that when all that pain and the emotion I felt at the time and the anger, when you look back at it, you can go back and you learn from those things. You learn that it's not as bad as what you think it was. There's not that much in it, but you can deal with it in such a way that all that emotion disappears, but you take the learning from it. So you've learned how to stand up, and you've learned how to deal with things yourself. Because what you realise is you wouldn't be the person you are now unless you've been through that. So those get negative things, there's positives in it as well. And there's always a positive intention. And the neuro-linguistic programming, I know there's one part of it that you really love, and it really can help with something like that, is timeline. Do you want to explain what timeline is then?
I can. So basically what timeline is for me is, right, when you're in time, it's probably just here, like you're in the middle, like it's now. But then people have time, their time backwards goes that way and forwards goes that way. But sometimes someone time could go backwards to the left and forwards to the right. So it's about finding what works for you. And then what I'd normally do is to elicit a timeline is kind of get someone to relax, close their eyes, and go back to the time that's bothered them. Like they'd walk down, say, a tunnel or a road, like going back to your past. And on the way back, you'd have TV screens either side. On the way back, and you'll have all your memories, your good memories, your bad memories. You can see them all back, but you stop at the memory that is bodying a safe. For instance, like if it goes back to your childhood of being bullied, a bad experience that really hurt you and really kind of, you remember, like you're saying, you remember that guy and what he did to you, like, but it brings it back to that, and then you can make this screen smaller. You can you have a remote control beside you. You can smash the remote. You can push the TV away. Like at the moment, it's a big TV because it's a big memory and it's full of lights. So you can take the color out of it. You can smash the remote control, and then it brings you to step into it for a moment and remember it. But then when you step back, it kind of has a reverse effect because you're pushing the screen away, the moment away, and then it brings you back to a good memory, a really positive and fun memory, and you get really involved in that part of it, and then that will counteract the bad experience when you come back to your time. And it's a really, like, I've done this with a few people, and they said, God, that really works. So that's one of my favorite things. You're right, the timeline.
Yeah, it's a great way just for people to understand is it to go back to any memory. When you immerse yourself in it, you get the feelings ever with it. So the idea of this is that you can go back and see yourself in that, and you can tell that younger self that everything's going to be okay. You can let them feel okay, so all that emotion disappears, and you still got that learning from it, but you don't have to worry about it anymore. So it's not something that stays inside you. You can just let it go on different ways. You can do that, and there's a lot of different techniques can be used, but it's a really powerful way of looking at things and thoughts. Because if you've got children who are having these issues, what you want them to do is to accept that it's happened. So they acknowledge that there is a problem there. You accept it. There's not a lot they can actually do. There should be, but there isn't always. But let it go. If it's the person that's got the issue and they're calling you names, okay, say I acknowledge that they've called me that. I accept they've called me that, but I don't need it. In their mind, just let it go. And it's, I know, easier said than done when you're going through it, because we know we've been there. It's not easy when it's you, but the more we can get children to people, and even adults, because this happens in workplaces, it happens male and female get it.
Yeah.
It's letting us realise it's the other person you said has got the issue, not you. So always acknowledge it and accept it's happened, but let it go in your head and go on with something else. You don't need to worry about it. You don't need to carry it with you. And that's the mistake I think a lot of people make. And I did. I admit that. I carried it for so long till I realised it didn't really matter. It was nothing. And in that moment when you realise that, you start laughing. You're actually going, why did I think it was so bad all that time? Why didn't I just let it go in the first place? And then it wouldn't have bothered you. But I said the good thing about it is also look at what we've achieved. We both had those instances when we were young and it's happened. But then look where we are now. You've got a lovely family. You've got your podcast. You've got a good job, but you're also learning so many other skills with the coaching things you're doing. So you've got that. I've now got my own business. I'm saying, get married, got a lovely house, everything. So we've both come through that. And maybe I'll give an example to some of these other people who say that it's not about what happens at that time, it's what you do with it. Yeah. So if you don't let it get you and it drags you down, then you can go anxiety, depression because of all that. What you can do is just say, okay, no, I'm not going to let them beat that. What do I want to do and find ways of doing that? Yeah. And never let, and it's always the same thing is don't let anybody get you down with that. Whatever your dream is, go for it. And the simple thing is, if you don't have a dream, they're all saying we're young from a song. If you don't have a dream, how are you going to have a dream come true? So people need to forget about all these things like that happen. Try and find ways of dealing with it. And if you have good children that are going through it or someone that's going through it and all, get them professional help. And if you can't get it, like with the NHS or with school, having somebody, there is people like us here that can do that, or even look on the internet, look it up. There's always people who can help the coach or the therapists who can deal with it. And if you do want to help with that, I know some people can do it as well. So if you can contact me at Tony Gordon at changingyourmindlimited.com. So it's Changing Your Mind Limited with LTD, it's limited. Tony Gordon, changingyourmind.com. I can either help with that or I can get you to someone if it's more suited, somebody who can. Is there any other advice then to be having young kids that you say that you do with social media? Do you control it in any way, or do you just try and hope that they get the best out of it?
Yeah, it's like you said at the start, you can't really restrict it because social media is everywhere now, like, and it's such a positive thing as well for like learning stuff, and you know, it can be really, really positive. But I think it's about like, if you're a parent, like monitoring your kids' access, maybe you're restricting it in some way, you know, like not having, like, you know, because you know, if you can, you know, the way you can put, if over 18 content and all that kind of stuff, you can put it, like, knocked it off, and because you know, you have to be careful with that side of things as well. But like, you know, so you know, you can kind of get your child to kind of, you know, like I said earlier on, to think it's not them, it's you. Like, build confidence in your child, like say that, look, like, that's them with the problem, so like get them to do other stuff like we've done. You know, we didn't lay down and let it bother us. We got interested in writing and podcasting and the and coaching. So that's a really good point you made as well, you know.
Because do you think it, but limiting the amount of time that children then go on to, because one thing we had was, we keep saying, is fresh air, getting out.
Yeah.
A lot of kids now spend a lot of time even they're outside, on their phones, on social media, on different, there's so many platforms that they're on, half I haven't heard of that they're on.
No.
But can you actually limit the time they're on them? Or do you just say that, do you control or manage it anyway? I know some people say that they keep a note of, or they can see what they're doing, or they have apps to keep an eye on the children where they are and everything. Do you do anything like that?
Yeah, well, you can set on a lot of devices now, like time, you know, time management of these devices. It shuts off after, if they're on it for more than a couple of hours. So that's a way you can do it, you know. Like, it's a bit harder when Luke is 16 now, so it's a bit more difficult. But I think it's from an early age, just to kind of try and get your children involved as much sports as you can. Like, even they say if you get them involved in, say, 8 sports before the age of 11, like, they might go away from it for a couple of years, but then years to come, they might have one of their friends who says, oh yeah, I might go and play football. And says, oh, I used to play football. My dad used to bring me there, and something might click, you know. So so my advice is try and get them involved as much sports and activities as you can, you know.
That's good. So you said it earlier on about how you've also helped people get through these things with music and everything. Did you ever, people say that they use their own feelings or emotions in music. Well, because of the bullying things that you've been through, did you ever use any of that to inspire you to write?
Yeah, well, I would have, yeah. Like, there's, like, you know, you get inspiration from life events, you know, like that's where I got inspiration for a lot of my songs, you know. But yeah, so like I went through a phase there during the lockdown. I was writing a song a day, but like, you always get things that happen in the past and come through in your lyrics, you know. So it would have, yeah. So especially, like, as I mentioned in the story I wrote earlier on as well, like the Larry Lamppost and Friends, there's a lot of hints at each end of the story to kind of help children if they're being bullied, or, you know, just kind of subtle kind of little things to say they can help themselves with. So I found doing that was a good way of helping kids that are reading the stories, you know.
Good, because that's what saying. Yeah, I know that I got it from a niece, and she's doing it, and so I know there's little morals and that in the stories as well. So although you're right, it can be for younger ones who may not pick up on that. They'll just have the fun aspects. As the children get a wee bit older and read it, or even the adults read them, they'll realise there's little bits in it yet they can learn from it. So it's good from that. And you mentioned there was going to be a follow-up for that as well.
Yeah. Well, as you know, I got COVID there a couple of weeks ago, so I was stuck in the house for stuck in my room for 14 days, or whatever it was. So I nearly got about 10,000 words done in that time, you know. So I've nearly got a sequel to the book, and what I've done is starting to narrate them as well, you know. Do an audio book of them. So that's another kind of thing in the pipeline I'm going to try, you know.
That's good. Because I mean, how are you feeling now with the COVID? I know you still got a cough, but are you over it completely? Because you've got asthma, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm completely over. Thanks, Tony. Yeah, I just got this cough over the last couple of days. It could be just something that came at me after the thing, but it's not too bad. Like, I feel okay now. Thanks.
I think when anybody knows you've got it, even without knowing you've got COVID, as soon as you start coughing, everybody has a reaction to it because they all think, can it be? Is it? And you've just had it. So, I mean, see, it comes to, you just mention the word cough and it comes out. So it's the thing with it. Everybody goes, but there's the one last thing I just want to know about that was that I said earlier about how many things you've done over the last 18 months, including your own podcast. And you mentioned about authors coming on as well. How did you get involved with the authors coming on, and what kind of books and that do they write?
Yeah, well, there's a mixed kind of, there's a lot of different type of authors I have on the podcast. I don't really discriminate because I'm involved in a few Facebook book clubs because I'm a writer. That gives you really good tips for writing your own books. And then every Saturday there's like a writers group as well that I've got involved in. So I've sent emails to them to say I'll do a podcast if you want to come on the podcast and promote your book. So it's kind of good to give something back to people that, you know, they're writers like you, to kind of get them to promote their books. And like it's unbelievable the amount of people I've met, authors I've met through the podcast. Like and then it's funny, you can help each other after the podcast, like, you know, with ideas. So that's been great.
Yeah, great. And as I said, it's inspired a lot of people, because a lot of us that sort of started the coaching thing along journey together, we'd realise when you look at it, when even in music, it's trying to think, when I was talking to someone about the bullying, and I said, how did they get over that? And when one of them said to me, what was your way? I said, I used to put a set music on, sit in a corner and just listen to music. It used to, well, they might not remember this, but there used to be these spindle things that were in a record player. I used to have record after record just sitting on top of each other. So they were just one drops down, and from one younger ones nowadays won't have a clue what we're talking about. But rather than having like you've got now is like audios, or you're just going to take something down on the download. In those days, we did these big machines with record players. You see them on the shops now. They actually made a comeback, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You can get in vinyl. But I used to sit there, and that was my way of dealing with it. So my parents knew something was wrong, because I was sitting in my room, having my music on, and I would read a book. And I loved reading. I realised one of the reasons I loved reading so much was it was always like fantasy things. It took me away to another world. So that was my way of coping with what was happening. That's why I was asking about the social media, because one of the kids nowadays, it's difficult for them to switch off, because they're always looking at phones, or they're always looking at their laptop or tablets or whatever, and it's all in your face. Whereas for me, that was my solitude. That was my way getting away from it. And the ironic thing is, still to this day, when if I'm not feeling great or whatever, I'll put a set of headphones on, put my music on, and I'll just read a book. Well, Kindle nowadays. I don't really read, although I've got a whole selection of books next to me here, but I still like actually the feel of books. I'm supposed to read that, but it's still my solitude. It's the one way that I've really learned to deal with anything in life. Came from a bad moment. The bullying side gave me something to cope with anything. And I've had a few things to face over the last few years, and that's always helped me. Is there one thing that you can think of then that like that, or something that you did that other people could do still now if they had any issues, let's just to get away from things for a bit of time?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tony. Because like me, I love music. I love playing the guitar and singing, writing songs. So that was my getaway. Even back then when I was a kid, I always liked singing. So that was my kind of way to get away from the situation. And that was a good thing when we were kids. Once we left school, it was gone for the weekend. But now, as you say, the phones are there. But so the one thing for me, I think that's what is a really good important thing for anybody that's listening, I think, is make sure you have something, find something you really enjoy doing to kind of take even if it's for an hour or two, get away from that situation, and something you enjoy doing. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, I think that's something that, for anybody out there, that's the one thing I do like to leave the message at the end of it is, if your child's going through it, or even you, anybody that's going through anything, work or anything like that, try and find a way of actually finding your own solitude for a little bit, somewhere that you can get a space for yourself, that you can go, take away from everything else in the world, and just be yourself for a little while. So a bit like self-care that people would say is just look after yourself for a bit. And if it is something that you're still looking at in the past, it's something that still bothered you, just remember, it doesn't define you. It doesn't make it of you. As Mark said earlier, which is a great point, the people who do the bullying are the ones with the issues, not you. It's not the person that gets bullied. Sometimes it can actually make you stronger, because you learn how you need to fight back, and you become mentally stronger as well. So you will go on a lot of things in life, but find that one thing that you can actually do. Something that makes you, whether it's reading like I do, listening to music, writing music like Mark do, playing a musical instrument, but you also need great things, sports, because if you can get sports, not necessarily solo ones, but in teams, that gives you something else as well. You've got a group and infrastructure. You feel you're part of something, so you don't worry about everything else while you're with them. So maybe joining things, a sport that you can do that just gets you away for a couple of hours, and it just helps people to take that bit of time and look after themselves. And it doesn't matter what you do, that's what everybody should do. Find a bit of self-care sometime every single day. Everybody should book it in a diary. I think it's half an hour every single day. Say you're going to read a bit of a book, maybe a chapter of a book, or listen to a couple of songs or an album or whatever it is. Put something by every day and say, that's my time. Some people do it for meditation now, which we spoke about in the last series, mindfulness. These are great things just to get away from everything. Things like Reiki, things like that as well, that you can get done. There's all these different things. Find something that suits you, whatever it is, try and find it and just enjoy it. And the most important is to enjoy every bit of life that you can. So not letting anybody else pull you down. Make sure that you can do that. Is there any last message or anything like that you'd like to give, Mark? Or any about maybe tell them where can you get your podcast if they want to listen to that?
Yeah, before I do that, I just something came to mind as well. Like I've always loved running, and I just think running is a great way to go out for a run to the park for an hour or half an hour. Is, well, maybe not an hour to start with. That'd be about a bit much, but like just even start off 5, go for a walk and run a bit. Because me, running has been a big part of my life. Even as a kid, as running has really, really helped me. Like you feel so good after, and it just you're releasing the endorphins. Endorphins,
yeah.
Endorphins, yeah. When you're running, so you feel absolutely great. I feel great after. So I'd recommend. Like it doesn't cost you much to run, but you get it doesn't cost you anything. But it's a great way for to release steam. I think it's great, you know.
Because for my honest, I used to do quite a bit. I did quite a lot of running, and I always loved that. And I suppose it's you're right. You can go run even along the streets. Put a set of headphones. Even when you go run, that gets you away from everything. You can listen to podcasts while you're on it. You can listen to music, whatever, just to go on it. But even just getting away sometimes to the countryside. Fresh air, go through a forest, look at different things, because you see the world in a totally different perspective when you go somewhere like that, because you suddenly realize it's quiet. And the problem with us is, as humans, our head is full of thoughts all the time, thousands of thoughts every single day, and that's part of the problem. But when you go somewhere like that, or for me personally, it would be a beach. I know it's not everybody's thing, but just to listen to the sea and walk along sand, I love that, and I could go there all day long and just stand there and listen. But I also love running on a beach. If you run along a sand, especially since I've been out, concrete is a bit difficult for me now, but running along sand, I could do all day long. And so it's a way of escaping. You're right, it's a great way of getting away is running. And you're right, but another thing is it gets you fit as well. So it's like a secondary gain from it. You're getting away from all these issues that's happened to you, but you're getting yourself fitter at the exact same time. So and it has a good balance on your life as well. So very good point. That's great. Right. So where can they get your podcast? Where can they actually
thanks very much, Tony, for this. It's Mark's Motivational Podcast, and it's now available on Spotify over the last week or two. And I put the interviews as well on YouTube. I do some solo ones as well. So you can check out it on Anchor or Spotify or YouTube are the main ones you can get my podcast on. So it's so I really appreciate you asking me on tonight, Tony. I love
that's brilliant.
It's really, really good.
So on YouTube, is it still called Mark's Motivational Podcast on YouTube that they look for?
Yeah. Well, it's just my YouTube channel, Mark Lestrange. I put all the videos up there of the podcast.
So if they look for Mark Lestrange on YouTube, and then they'll be able to find the videos to the podcast there.
Yeah.
And if you got other ones of your songs not on there as well?
I have, I did a few Trad Tuesdays over the last few years as well. So that's there. Excuse me, that's there as well to check out.
So that's brilliant. So we've got your podcast, it's Mark's Motivation Podcast on Spotify, Anchor, and if they go to Mark Lestrange on YouTube, they'll be able to find that and some of your songs as well. And if you also want to go and look and see Larry Lamppost and Friends,
Adventures of
you'll
Larry,
be able to get that on Kindle.
Yeah.
Okay, so you'll be able to get it on Amazon if you want to go and have a look there. Well, thank you very much to Mark for coming along today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tony. I really appreciate it.
That's brilliant. So catch us next Wednesday again. We'll be on. I've got a guest, a lady from Australia. Nancy's coming on. She's an empath, so she's coming on to explain what that means. She's a spiritual healer, what that actually does as well. So how to catch on there. So that would be season 2, episode 4, next Wednesday. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining again today. I appreciate it. You'll be able to find this on YouTube. So if you look on YouTube, you'll be able to find Break Free from Your Monkey Mind podcast. And it'll also be on Anchor and Spotify as well, and all other ones. You'll be able to find it on Google and Apple as well. Okay, so thank you very much to my guest Mark today. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
And thank you everybody again for listening. And anybody, one thing he says, if there's anything at all, like subject that was picked this week, someone asked about this for bullying, if there's any you would like to actually listen to, or you would like to come on and actually speak yourself about an issue you've had and how you've overcame that you think could inspire other people to do the same. Doesn't matter how small you think it is of that, you never know who you can help. So just get a hold of me, Tony Gordon at changingyourmindlimited.com. Remember, I said the limit is LTD. So Tony Gordon at changingyourmindlimited.com, and we can arrange a time suitable to record you in here, and I'll get you onto the podcast as well. So thank you again, Mark. Appreciate that, and I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, thanks.
Cheers.